Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon if you're listening somewhere else or around the world. This is Martha Creek, marthacreek.com to contact me directly. And today's an important lesson for me. I've been looking at this material and thinking about this, reflecting and practicing it for decades now. And as you know, we all know practice makes progress. Practice makes progress. So, how to have hard conversations, how to say what has to be said, how to say what's scary, very, very scary to say. So, critical conversations, crucial conversations, accountable conversations, and some groundwork here for how we can be benefited by this, and as well as looking at some of the consequences of not doing it, which I'm pretty familiar with too myself. So, step one, when it's something's looks like it may be hard to say or kind of treacherous to say, to start with heart. Ask yourself what you really want, what's important to you. Also consider what's at stake. And there are things at stake here. And for me, I know I have a tendency to avoid, for avoidance, of letting it go, brushing, turning away from it, pretending, even denying, sweeping it under a rug, hoping, praying, and treating that it's going to go away. And maybe sometimes they go away. I don't know. I'm talking about the times it doesn't go away. And at times it not only doesn't go away, but it actually may exacerbate or expand or whatever, where my silence, for example, is actually violence. Silence as violence. So then if it goes underground, I build resentments, I get snippier, snarkier, more frustrated, resentful, then I have perpetuated in the world the very thing I claim I don't want in the world, which is more suffering, more tension, more anxiety, more angst, and yes, more violence. So to start with heart, so to go into my own heart and to speak from the heart without trying to do it right. So what's important to me, why I'm having this conversation, why I want to bring this up, and for me to hold in mind my what for. Like why I'm having this conversation is to make sure this conversation is beneficial to the relationship and that I'm preventing, if I can, the relationship from eroding or getting more tense or treacherous. Also, to stay open-minded about it. To learn to look. Learn to reflect, learn to monitor, to self-regulate. So to then always be asking myself, where am I going here? And to be alert and even hyper alert to when I become defensive. And when I've lost my neutrality, my conscious intentional neutrality. So how can I have the conversation and monitor myself, regulate myself, restore myself, and do it so quickly, which may include having and needing wisely to take a pause or to slow down or to restore myself, maybe even taking a little break or walking away or asking for a moment of silence. And to notice at any time when the conversation stops being a conversation. So when dialogue becomes monologue. So if you take nothing away from this idea today, to take away the necessity to know the difference between monologue and dialogue and not to mistake the two. And then equally important is to make it a safe space. Make it the space around the conversation and the environment a safe space. So that I can start by saying, for example, it's difficult for me to say these things, and I'm going to say them because my relationship with you means so much to me. or I've caught myself getting defensive or withdrawing or withholding love. And I don't want to do that. It's painful for my heart. It actually hurts my heart. And I know it's bound to be painful for you in our relationship. So I'm going to make it as safe as possible to create the most comfortable situation possible. So it could be leading with, I own my part. I know I've been hard to be with. I know it was hard to hear our disagreements. By starting by apologizing, perhaps. I want to start straight away. I want to start by apologizing for what I said or what I did. I want to apologize for how I came across or my tone, or that it came across as condescending or diminishing in some way. So I want to own my part, and then to start with an apology, anything that's going to create an environment of safety, which leaves the space more open, which leaves it more possible, more potential there for a real crucial conversation or critical conversation. Also, to make it safe, is to know that we may establish safety in the beginning, but if I start to get defensive, or when they start to get defensive, or when I start to get defensive, to stop there and recreate safety. Establish it again. So it's not just a one-time flip a switch, push a button thing, but there may be times to pause and stop and to restore safety as we go along, depending on the intensity, the timing, and that. And then asking a question to stay more in an inform me state, help me understand this. This is what I noticed, what was happening there. Any kind of question that shows I'm interested, that I'm also seeking to understand, not coming with demands, willfulness, stubbornness, and some of our other patterned ways of coming at these things. So any kind of question or a demonstration that I am aware that it went off the rails somewhere, and I'm wanting to look to see what was happening there. So even you could say, I want to demonstrate, not pretend, but literally demonstrate that I have caring about it, and I have caring about how it went, and wanting to get it back on the rails, and to do so as quickly as possible to restore the relationship, to restore the communication, or whatever may have been lost or breached. And then the next step is to master your story. Master your story. So that means then not to let the story run the show. So for me to master my story, that means I must focus on what happened that made me feel a certain way. And I don't want to displace that or project that responsibility for that onto another person. So then I've got to take ownership of my own responsibility, and responsibility for my own emotions, for my own triggering, for my own upset about that, and not displace or put that off onto another human being. So then I can then bring to the conversation, I want to address what happened. I want to address what went on there. I also want to learn from it. And then I'm not going to hold anybody else responsible or accountable for the shape I'm in or for what happened in me. So that means then to have some ability, and a growing, expanding ability, to think through emotions, to monitor emotions, to be mindful of emotions, and then to regulate emotions so that I can then choose an appropriate, meaningful, efficient way to respond that's going to move me in the direction of my goals, not the knee-jerk instinctual reactivities that's likely going to present if I don't pause and regulate myself and presence myself. So this is the handy for these 3 Martha Creek P's that I'm quoted on, which is to pause, presence myself, establish safety within myself, establish safety in the environment, remember my why. What for am I bringing this forward? What for am I entering this conversation? Looking at how it's affecting me, looking at what I mean, and then returning to my heart space, and to do it and repeat as necessary. And then state my path. share what I'm noticing, share what is factual as far as I know, and be willing to know that even though I think it's factual, it may not be. So, testing out, is what I'm believing actually factual? Testing out my conclusions that I've already drawn. And it's what I mean when you hear me quoted as saying, in the beginning, there is the conclusion. So it's like then for me to test these out. So I'm thinking this, is that true? I'm thinking this is what happened. Is that what happened? So willing, more open minded in my mindset to be informed, to be wrong, to be half informed, or whatever the case may be. So that this way, the other party, my friend, my colleague, my coworker, partners, husband, spouse, wives, whatever it is, can see immediately where I'm coming from. That there's less doubt, there's less propensity then to set it up as a defensive model if I clearly state my path, clear about my why, coming from a heart space, not displacing my feelings and my responsibility for self off on another. Then real potential exists here. And then also then to be willing to explore the other's perspectives. What was it like for them? What were they thinking? What caused it in them? What do they believe contributed to it, us losing energy or getting off the rails or getting offended? So being willing to explore their humanity, to explore their perspectives, their path, their integration of it, so that there's a potential then for a real dialogue, a shared dialogue in an infinite space to make sure and to lean toward, go in the direction of making sure that I understand myself and where I'm coming from, and that I also can understand them, what they're thinking and feeling and believing, and that I'm going to be the first to offer understanding to them. So seek first to understand before wanting and needing, shoulding to be understood. And then to begin in a space like this, we begin to look for what could be a strategy, what would be an area of agreement we can land on, an area of potential, an area of consensus, an area of moving to action, to remedy, to antidote, to recovery, to relief. Then only then is that a potential for us to have an enlightened relationship, an expansive, open relationship, and not stay bound up and tied up and burdened by these old instinctual knee-jerk behaviors and patterns that we simply haven't had any mastery at, really. And in fairness to us, each and every one of us, we're not taught these things. There's no place in our life that this is really taught, even through educational processes or master's degrees and PhDs, of how to come to these tense conversations and to do so differently, and accepting the consequences of not doing it and taking responsibility for doing it. So this week, I'll be fleshing this out in detail with examples, role play, more education. I've drawn on resources from the authors of the book, Crucial Conversations, looking at crucial accountabilities and the tenets of this. So I hope you'll join and encourage others to join too, because it is literally for every human being. So anybody with a pulse is ready for this class. Everybody with a pulse is ready, and I'm ready, and I'm in again. So I hope you'll join me and to put the invitation out for others too. So I hope you'll re-listen to this to get these steps down. And then here's a few more of the tenets that I'll leave you with to begin to think about as we move into the week. In crucial, critical conversations, be sure to carefront instead of confront. Carefront instead of confront. And sometimes confronting is necessary. That will be after carefronting didn't work or wasn't effective. Make sure we're looking at what the right problem is and not making people our issues. So we keep a clear distinction between issues and people. So hard on issues, softer on people. So until we meet again, I send you my wholehearted love. I bow to you. Thank you, there, Unity in San Francisco, for your hard work, your perseverance, your emotional mastery, your spiritual mastery, your absolutely conscious evolution to change yourselves and to change the planet, the world. And bravo and Godspeed. And I'm cheerleading you and serving with you all along the way. MarthaCreek.com if I can serve you in any way specific. Namaste. Blessings and love.